Sometimes it can be hard to find the right lingerie elastic for your project, but in this video I will show you how to use simple braided elastic to make underwear. I'm using a 6mm braided elastic, but you can use any size of elastic you like. Just make sure to change the seam allowance of your sewing pattern to match the size of the elastic. I'm using the Jenny panties sewing pattern, but you can use any pattern you want. You might need to adjust your pattern for this project, but I will show you how to do that. In case you want to support my work, you can check out my online shop and find all my PDF sewing patterns. I will leave the link in the description down below. All my sewing patterns come with seam allowance, but if you are using any other sewing pattern, you will need to adjust it to this project by changing the seam allowance. If your pattern requires a fold of elastic but you want to change it to the braided elastic, you should add the size of the elastic you are using to all the edges where you are going to sew that elastic. For example, I'm using a 6mm elastic, so I would add a 6mm seam allowance to the legs and the waist opening. Let's get started. I'm not going to explain to you all the process of how to sew this underwear. In this video I will show you how to sew the elastic, but I'm leaving all the tutorials in the description down below, so you can watch and learn how to sew the crotch pieces and the sides of this underwear. Once you get to this point, your underwear is ready for the elastic. I recommend sewing the crotchet with the crotch lining with a straight stitch. It will help you when sewing the elastic later. It's time to decide on the elastic measurements. If you are using my pattern, it comes with an elastic measurement chart, so you don't need to do any maths. But I'm going to tell how I did it, so you can use the same method to decide the measurements of the elastic for your project. And remember, this is my personal preference. You can use whatever tension you like on your elastic. I started by drawing the side and the crotch seam allowance. Measure the edge of the leg opening without the seam allowance and write down the numbers. In my case, the leg opening is 61 centimeters. Do the same with the waist opening, measuring the front and the back waist without the seam allowance. In my case, the waist opening is 6.5 centimeters. So what I did was reduce the total leg opening by 5% to figure out the elastic measurement. For the waist, I reduced the total waist opening by 6% to figure out the elastic measurement. It worked for my project, but you can reduce the elastic percentage depending on your preference. Cut the elastic and always leave some extra centimeters on each edge. Divide the leg opening into quarters. I'm using the side seam as the middle point. Divide the elastic into quarters as well. I use the pen to mark it. You need a stretchable stitch to sew elastics. I'm using a narrow zigzag stitch. Sew the elastic to the wrong side of the fabric, matching the quarters of the leg opening to the quarters of the elastic. I'm starting to sew the elastic from the side seam. Stretch only the elastic to match the quarters. Try to sew the elastic close to the edge of the fabric. Stretch only the elastic to match the quarters. Cut the elastic close to where you started sewing. I prefer not to overlap the elastic, so I stopped sewing just before the side seam. One leg is ready. Time to follow the same steps to sew the elastic to the other leg and the waist. Cut off the excess fabric. the edge to the wrong side of the fabric and sew the elastic using a zigzag stitch. Try to sew close to the inner edge of the elastic. This is how it should look. It's ready, and I hope you like this tutorial. Let me know in the comments down below what you would like to learn next. Thanks for watching. See you next time.